The girl on the bus, Tim Watson, had learned to trust his instincts. 15 years in law enforcement had taught him that the smallest things, the flicker of an eye, the stiffening of a shoulder, the hesitation before answering a question, could mean the difference between saving a life and missing a vital clue. And today, that feeling struck harder than it had in years. It started the moment a man boarded his bus at the downtown stop, tugging a little girl behind him. She looked no older than 6, barely visible beneath the oversized hoodie swallowing her small frame. The sleeves hung past her hands. Her blonde hair was dull, tangled, and she moved slowly, like she didn't want to draw attention, like she wanted to disappear. The man gripped her wrist, not like a parent, but like someone dragging baggage. His eyes darted around nervously. He wore a hood, despite the heavy California heat. And his knee bounced in agitation as he pulled the girl toward the back of the bus. Tim, sitting in the driver's seat, didn't turn his head, but he followed their every movement in the rearview mirror. He'd seen this before. Parents didn't act like that. Fathers didn't pull their daughters through crowds like luggage, and little girls didn't shrink into themselves like ghosts. Something dark twisted in his gut. Tim announced the next stop, his voice calm. "Next stop, Market Street." No response. In the mirror, Tim saw the man force the girl into the back row. He sat on the edge of the seat, arms stretched along the backrest. Not a casual gesture, but a barrier, a blockade. The girl just sat, silent, her hands curled into tiny fists. Then the man leaned in, whispered something. She flinched. It was small, barely a twitch, but Tim saw it, and that was enough. His stomach sank. Outside, the city carried on. Morning traffic, long shadows, a normal day. But inside the bus, every nerve in Tim's body was screaming. Then his earpiece crackled. Amber Alert, missing child, 6 years old, last seen in oversized green hoodie. Suspect is adult male, late 30s, last spotted downtown. Tim's grip tightened on the wheel. He kept his face neutral. No sudden moves, no change in pace. If the man saw him react, he might panic, he might run, or worse. Tim adjusted the mirror again, angling it to get a better view. That's when he saw her stomach. At first, she just looked skinny, fragile, but then she shifted slightly, and he saw it. Her midsection was swollen, not with baby fat, not from a full meal. It was unnatural, a bulge under her hoodie, rounded, firm. His breath hitched. Malnutrition, a medical condition, or something much, much worse? Tim's jaw clenched. He had to call for help, but discreetly. He glanced at the intersection ahead. An idea formed. He reached for the intercom. "Folks," he said calmly, "we're making a quick stop for a routine inspection. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Please remain seated." It was vague, just odd enough to buy him time. The man tensed. His fingers twitched. His leg bounced harder. His eyes darted to the front, then back to the door. He was thinking of running. Tim stood slowly. "There's been a report of an unattended bag on board. Just a quick safety check." Still calm, still in control. The man didn't move. His leg bounced faster. Tim walked the aisle, pretending to check beneath seats, but his eyes stayed locked on the back row, on the girl. She hadn't moved since she boarded. He stopped at the row ahead of them and crouched, pretending to examine the floor. Then he heard it, a whisper, barely audible. "Help me." Tim froze. She hadn't spoken a single word until now, but that was enough. He didn't react, didn't look at her, just nodded slightly, barely emotion. Then he straightened, turned to the man, and said, "Sir, would you mind standing up? Just need to check under your seat." The man looked up. His face was pale, eyes wild. I didn't see anything," he said hoarsely. "Still need to check," Tim replied, polite but firm. The man stood. The girl flinched. Her hands trembled beneath the hoodie. She wasn't just scared, she was trapped. Tim bent to scan the floor, reaching slowly toward his waist, his fingers brushing the silent alert button on his radio. One tap, no words. Dispatch would know. Undercover officer needs backup. Now. Tim stood, dusting off his hands. "All clear," he said lightly. Then he turned, and the man said, "We need to get off." Tim stopped. The man had grabbed the girl's wrist again, too tight. Tim forced a smile. "Sorry, sir. We need to wait for my supervisor to clear us." The man's grip tightened. "I don't give a damn about your supervisor," he hissed. "Let us off, now." The tension on the bus shifted. Passengers who had been indifferent suddenly sat straighter, eyes flicked toward the back. Tim took a slow breath. He had to stall. "I understand," he said gently, "but we've got procedures. It's for everyone's safety." "Safety?" the man snapped. "Bullshit!" He yanked the girl forward. She stumbled. Tim saw the pain flash across her face. That was it. He was hurting her. Tim clenched his fists. 3 more minutes. That's how long until backup. He prayed he could hold out. Then, the man reached into his pocket. Tim's blood ran cold. Was it a weapon? A phone? Something worse? He didn't know. But he knew this. If he didn't act soon, it would be too late. Tim Watson's training kicked in. He didn't reach for his weapon. Not yet. The man's hand moved inside his pocket. Then, in a quick flick of motion, he pulled something out. Not a phone, not a toy. A switchblade. Old, rusted, serrated. The kind of blade you gut something with. Tim's pulse exploded in his ears. The man flipped it open with a sharp click. "I said," he growled, his voice trembling. "Let us off, now." Tim didn't move, didn't blink. Every sound became deafening. The hum of the bus engine, the creak of seats, the shallow breathing of frightened passengers. He had 2 minutes, maybe less. "Listen," Tim said evenly. "Nobody wants trouble." "Then open the damn doors." The man's grip on the knife was twitchy, unstable. Tim saw it now. This guy wasn't a trained killer. He was desperate. And desperate men were dangerous. Tim took a slow step forward. "Okay," he said. "You want off the bus? We'll figure something out." The man's eyes darted to the doors, calculating, looking for an opening. "If I open the doors," Tim continued, "you have to let her go. That's the deal." A flicker of hesitation. "You don't want to hurt her," Tim pressed. "I can see that. Let's do this the easy way." The man hesitated, and that's when Tim moved. He lunged, fast and hard, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting. The knife hit the floor. The girl gasped. The man snarled, trying to break free, but Tim had already locked his arm in place. "Let her go!" Tim barked. The man didn't. Then, a siren outside. Police. That was all Tim needed. With a sharp pull, he slammed the man face first into a pole. The man let out a grunt and finally let go. "Run!" Tim shouted. The girl bolted, tiny legs carrying her faster than he thought possible. The bus doors burst open. Uniformed officers stormed in. Weapons drawn. Tim stepped back as the man slumped to the floor, dazed. It was over, or so he thought, because as the girl stumbled toward an officer, clutching her hoodie. The fabric shifted. Tim caught a glimpse of her stomach, and what he saw made his blood turn to ice. Her abdomen, swollen, misshapen, and beneath the fabric, stitches, thick, black, jagged stitches. Fresh, too fresh. Tim felt his lungs seize. This girl, this child, had been cut open. Something had been put inside her. This wasn't just an abduction. This was trafficking. But not the kind anyone was prepared for. "Get her to the hospital," Tim barked. The paramedics didn't hesitate. They lifted her gently. Tim climbed into the ambulance with them. "Go!" The sirens screamed as they tore through the city. Tim sat beside her on the stretcher, gripping the railing. She was still. Too still. Her hoodie was lifted slightly, just enough to see the inflamed skin. The rough thread. The paramedic, a woman named Jenna, snapped on gloves, leaning close. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "can you tell me your name?" Silence. Jenna moved her hand carefully near the wound. The girl flinched violently, curling away. "No," she whimpered. "I'm not gonna hurt you," Jenna soothed. "I promise, but I need to check." "No, no, no!" Her breathing grew rapid, panicked. Tim leaned in. "Sweetheart, we have to help you, but we need to know, did someone do this to you?" The girl hesitated, and barely audible. "He said it'll break." Jenna froze. Tim's spine stiffened. "Break?" he echoed. "What do you mean?" The girl's eyes darted toward Jenna, then back to Tim. Finally, she whispered, "Inside me." Tim's stomach twisted. Smuggling. But not drugs, not money. Something worse. "Sweetheart," he said gently. "Who did this?" Tears welled in her eyes, and then, "My daddy." Tim's jaw clenched. The man on the bus. He hadn't just hurt her. He'd carved her open. She called him daddy, not in fear, not in sarcasm, but because she'd been conditioned to. She had been raised by her captor. The ambulance screeched into the ER bay. The trauma team rushed out. "Abdominal trauma," Jenna called. "Unknown implant, possibly mechanical." Tim jumped down and followed. She was wheeled into surgery. Tiny hands gripping the stretcher rail. Eyes wide, silent. "Please," she whispered. Tim walked beside her. "You're safe now," he said softly. But deep down, he wasn't sure if that was true. Tim sat in the hospital waiting room, staring at the tiled floor. His hands were clenched, knuckles white. He'd seen terrible things in his career. Murders, overdoses, accidents. But this was evil that wore a father's face. The surgical door swung open. Dr. Haynes, trauma lead, stepped out. Her scrubs were stained. Tim stood immediately. "How is she?" Dr. Haynes exhaled. "She's stable, for now." Tim's shoulders slumped in relief, but the doctor wasn't done. "We found something," she said, voice tight. Inside her abdominal cavity. It was implanted, wrapped in gauze, hidden behind her small intestine. Tim's chest tightened. "What was it?" Dr. Haynes swallowed. "A black pouch, sealed tight. Inside, we found microchips, dozens, and a transmitter." Tim's blood ran cold. This wasn't just abuse. This was organized, industrial, coded. "They used her," Haynes continued, "as a human courier." Tim tried to speak. Nothing came. "She's just a child," Haynes whispered. He nodded, jaw locked. "Can I see her?" "She's waking up now. We gave her something mild for the pain. She asked for the bus man." Tim blinked. "The what?" Dr. Haynes smiled faintly. "That's what she called you." Tim's throat tightened. She remembered him, trusted him. He walked slowly down the corridor, heart heavy. Inside the room, the lights were dim. Machines hummed quietly. The girl lay still, wrapped in warm blankets, an IV in her tiny arm. She turned her head when he entered. Her eyes met his. "You stayed," she said. Tim smiled gently. "I promised, didn't I?" She nodded barely. There was a long silence. Then, "Is he gone?" Tim sat beside her. "Yes, he can't hurt you anymore." More silence. Then she whispered, "I thought I'd explode." Tim frowned. "Explode?" She looked down. "He said if I ran, I'd explode." Tim's heart broke. The man had brainwashed her, convinced her that escape meant death. A cruel, perfect cage. "You're safe now," Tim said again, firmer. "What he told you was a lie." She nodded, but the fear lingered in her eyes. Tim leaned closer. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then, quietly, "Emma." He smiled. "That's a beautiful name." "It was my mom's name too." Tim's heart twisted. "Where's your mom now?" Emma didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Gone. Taken from her. Replaced by monsters. Tim exhaled slowly. "You're very brave, Emma." "No," she said. "I was scared." He smiled. "Brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you did the right thing anyway." Her eyes filled, but she nodded. Tim sat with her a while, silent, steady. Outside, the police were building a case. The man on the bus was already in custody, and from what Tim had heard, they were about to uncover an entire ring. Emma had been the key. Not a package, not evidence. A little girl with more courage than most grown men. Before he left, she reached for his hand. "Will you ride the bus tomorrow?" she asked. Tim blinked back emotion. "Maybe," he said softly, "if you want me to." She nodded, then closed her eyes. Tim stood, watched her breathe, and for the first time that day, he let himself feel hope. Not everything was broken. Some things, just maybe, could be made whole again.